Well, good morning, everyone. I don't have slides because sometimes I like to be a little bit more human with my presentations. I talk a lot about AI, and in a world where our focus can be pulled in so many directions, it's nice to be able to pull that focus into one place just for 10 minutes. I won't talk too long, I promise. Now, I'm going to ask you guys a few questions. It's early in the morning. Let's wake up a little bit. First question. How many of you have heard of AI ethics? Raise your hand. Ooh, not as many as I was expecting. OK, how many of you believe in the importance of embedding our values into our technology and really just our business practices? Raise your hand. I'm glad I got more that time. That would be concerning. How many of you have worked with an AI ethicist? Oh, I got a few. Great. OK, I always hope I get one. Well, it's time to fix that. I'm an AI ethicist, and we're going to work together today a little bit, just so you can kind of understand what it's like, so you can start to bridge that gap between caring about ethics and actually doing something about it. But before I start, I want to talk a little bit about what exactly is ethics. It's kind of this term that floats around. We're using it a lot, actually, as a marketing term now. Builds good social capital. But what actually is it? So my work as an AI ethicist, I'm using ethics as a decision-making tool. It's quite literally a science for me. When it comes down to it, our technology, just like our lives and everything else in this world, exists on a spectrum. You have the worst-case scenario, say dumpster fire, everything's gone wrong. But you also have best-case scenario, everything's gone right. Not just nothing's gone wrong, but everything's gone right and good. Our technology, our practices sit on that spectrum. As an ethicist, what I'm doing is using our values to first prevent that dumpster fire, prevent those bad things from happening by using risk mitigation techniques, by understanding where the risks lie and how to safeguard for them. But then I'm also in the opposite direction, using ethics as a decision-making tool for innovation, designing for our values, bringing those values to life in our, well, specifically in our technology, in my case, but bringing that to life. It's that spectrum. The other thing I want you to know about ethics and working with an ethicist is I'm not here to make any decisions for you. Sometimes ethicists get this misconception that, oh, it's the person you're going to bring in, and that's the person that's just going to say no the whole time, and they're going to be really annoying. Well, you're not working with a good ethicist if that's the case, but what my job here is to actually support you in your decision-making. I'm bringing you information that you need to make insightful decisions, make the best informed decisions possible. And how I do that is I work through a couple different frameworks and tools. One of those tools are called thought experiments. And we're going to run a little thought experiment together today. Now, I'm really excited. I haven't done this thought experiment before with an audience of this size. So this is also an experiment for me. But let's give it a try. So pay attention, because I will ask you questions. Let's imagine you are the head of marketing at a thriving startup, and you are trying to target a specific company. And let's make it a big company. One of the Fortune 500, you're really excited, you really want this customer, and you're trying to design marketing and sales content to be able to reach that target customer. And you're thinking, okay, they're very specific, they're very niche, how do we design this content? You're like, well, they have all of this content already publicly available. You know what I can do? I can pull some of those blog posts and even content and script from their website and their social media. And what if I feed that into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to then produce some type of, article in that same language and that same tone targeted at my customer? Seems pretty cool, right? You're using generative AI to target your content, your material. You're customizing it. So imagine you're standing in the shoes of the business. This is saving you time. This is saving you effort. You're getting a customized, targeted ad or, let's say, a blog post. How many of you would use ChatGPT to do this? Raise your hand. Nice. Glad you guys are paying attention. All right. Now, let's take ourselves out of the shoes of your head of marketing, you're working for the business, and let's put ourselves in the shoes of your customer. Your customer is scrolling through, I don't know, LinkedIn, and they're reading the blog post, and they're thinking, wow, this is really written in, this really resonates with me. This company gets me. They understand where I'm coming from. They clearly understand our needs. We seem to have similar values. We seem to have similar tone even. This really is a great mix. This is a great fit. And so say I'm your customer, and we become customers of this thriving startup, and we start to engage, and then all of a sudden we realize there's a huge dissonance between what I was reading online, what I was reading in terms of content that was being delivered to me and the sales and everything, versus how the company, how the startup actually functions. And then I come to discover that they have taken the content of my website, and say I'm marketing over at the other company, that I have put time and effort and money into producing, and they took that and they just reproduced it and fed it back to me. And now I'm sitting here going, can I trust that startup? Can I trust this customer, this supplier now? What else have they been hiding? What else have they been trying to use my own words parroted back to me? So you're now back in the shoes of the company, but you have this perspective of your customer. Raise your hand if you would still use that generative AI, feed all of that information into ChatGPT, and have that reproduced content. We got a couple. Nice. This experiment went really well. I'm excited. What's happening here? This is a trade-off. You're looking at trading off, do we want to capitalize and focus on efficiency and targeting of messaging? Do we want to focus on, say, the privacy of our targeted customer? Perhaps we want to be more creative in our content. You're really looking at your values here and trying to figure out what is the right decision. This is a moral trade-off. What you're doing right now is you're actually working through an ethics question. And this is what happens when you're working with an ethicist. You sit there and you go through these trade-offs and you look at the different perspectives and the different values and how your decisions will impact the people around you. Now, I really boiled this one down. There's a lot more nuance to that one simple question, but what I wanted to show here is two things. First of all, it doesn't have to be black and white like that. I just made it black and white questions to make it easier for a fun little thought experiment. But you can do a mix. You can use ChatGPT to help you start to target your messaging for a specific profile. And then take that information that ChatGPT has put out and change it and adapt it so that it is still your own. That's also an option. It's not black and white. The other part that might drive you a little crazy to hear, there's no right answer. What do I mean by that? There are no right answers, there are right actions. Once you have made a decision and you understand the impact of that decision, that's when you really have to start to understand, well, what do I need to do to prevent, say, my customer from feeling manipulated? If I do feed that information and I do use a large language model to produce that written content, what do I do to make sure that my customer still feels cared for, that they can still trust me? Or say I don't use it, well, how can I also incorporate generative AI in a different way that doesn't necessarily involve me feeding in information from my target customer? It depends on the action, not necessarily the decision. So why should you care about any of this? Why should you care about ethics? Why should you care about ethics in artificial intelligence or even our practices in marketing and advertising? And not only why should you care, why should you care enough to act? Because frankly, I don't care if you care. I care if you act. There's a difference. And when it comes to our current day, action is what's going to make the difference, the true difference. So, between caring and action, when you are acting on when you're acting on your values, when you're acting on your ethics, What does that do? That builds trust. We are at a point in time, especially with generative AI, where our customers, where our society base has extreme lack of trust. You just saw really cool images and text. That's fun. But you know what that does? People are constantly sitting thinking what's real, what's not, what's real, what's not. How can they trust anyone if they don't believe the information is true? And that's the importance now of being able to understand when you are using generative AI and all of its cool facets. Trust me, I'm a big proponent of generative AI. I've used it. We produced a journal. We used generative AI for part of that journal. We have used it. But what I'm saying is don't use generative AI. I'm saying use it with consciousness. Use it responsibly. Understand that when you use it, also communicate that you are using it, which builds trust in your customers. So they're no longer sitting there going, is this image real or not? It's a cool image, but I really don't know. You can put the prompt that you used and what model that you used to create that prompt, kind of like you do in citing photographers. Simple. That alone, that little text alone, already makes an incredible difference in building that trust. So going forward, when it comes to generative AI, when it comes to embedding our ethics, I want you to keep trust at the forefront of your mind. I want you to keep trust there and think, are my actions, what I'm doing, is this going to build trust, not in me, but in my end user, in my end customer? Will this build their trust in me? All right, I have one last question, just to make sure you're paying attention. And this is usually a question that I ask to a bunch of entrepreneurs, so change of audience. We're going to see how this one goes as well. But how many of you got into your profession because you wanted to make your part of the world just a little bit better in any way? Raise your hand. So I have to say, usually in a room full of entrepreneurs, you're like, yep, that's me. I got it. But that is all to say, with AI, the scope and capability and spread of it, we really can change our world, but the worlds of others around us. So make sure that that change you're creating is a change that is good and one that you want. Thank you.